Sunday morning in a country chapel. Iron shackles clank against wooden pews as a planter's daughter steps into the aisle. She kneels, presses her lips to a slave's bound hands. The congregation gasps, her mother's voice cracks like a whip across the silence. But this kiss awakens more than scandal. A small girl with perfect pitch hums a hymn that's really a secret map. Hidden papers bear forged seals. A family Bible holds freedom, written in its margins, a truth that could save a man's life or destroy a household. Storm clouds gather, patrol riders thunder past. Church bells toll as the town assembles for judgment. When the seal is tested and the truth comes to light. When the daughter faces her mother in that same aisle. Will one kiss of defiance be enough to break the chains of a lifetime, or will it cost them everything they've ever known? Daybreak slipped through the kitchen window like a cat. Marigold's bare feet found cold plank boards. She tied the blue ribbon round her wrist, pulling the knot tight with her teeth. 30 bushels corn, she whispered to the steam rising from Aunt Hester's pot. 12 pounds salt pork, 6 yards cotton cloth. Yesterday's market ledger lived perfect in her mind. Every number, every name, every coin counted twice. Hester stirred horehound and willow bark. The widow's cough had kept the house awake. Steam curled bittersweet. Outside, old Samson's boots crunched gravel toward the stable. Child's got a mind, like a steel trap. Hester said to the kitchen girls. Snaps shut on everything she hears. Marigold hummed low. The melody threaded through her breathing. Guide me, O thou great Jehovah, pilgrim through this barren land. Carry that ribbon to church, child, Hester said, and keep your pitch low. The melody lived in more than her throat. It lived in the spaces between words, in the pauses where something else might fit. Ellen Ashford stood at her bedroom window. The black dress hung heavy on her shoulders. Father's funeral would be hard enough without the debt collectors circling like buzzards. Mother had counted coins 3 times before breakfast. Each time, the sum grew smaller. Downstairs, wagon wheels turned on gravel. Josiah guided the horses with hands that knew their moods. Even in iron shackles, he moved like water, like a man who belonged to the morning itself. Mother's voice carried up the stairs. Sharp as winter wind. That coachman rides too easy for a thief. Abel says he tried to steal grain. But Ellen had seen what happened. The child running toward the bolting team. Josiah's leap from the driver's box. His body between a girl and iron-shod hooves. No thief would risk his life for someone else's child. The church bell called across tobacco fields. Time to bury the dead and face what came after. The country chapel held 40 souls. Father's coffin rested near the pulpit. Flowers wilted in the heat. The congregation fanned themselves with hymn books. Reverend Bell's voice rolled like distant thunder. He was a man who knew his duty. Ellen listened with half her mind. The other half watched Josiah in the back pew. Irons clinked when he folded his hands. Abel Griggs sat beside him. The overseer's eyes never left the shackled man. Mother swayed in the heat. The widow's cough caught in her chest. She stumbled forward. Josiah rose without thinking. His chains dragged as he caught the widow's elbow. Steady hands, gentle as if she were made of glass. Something broke loose in Ellen's chest. Love and gratitude and shame all tangled together. She stepped into the aisle, knelt beside Josiah's bound hands, pressed her lips to his knuckles. The kiss lasted 1 heartbeat. Long enough for everyone to see. "Don't you dare kiss a Negro," Mother's voice cracked like a whip. The congregation gasped. Heads turned. Whispers hissed between the pews. Ellen stayed kneeling, her lips still warm where they'd touched his skin. "He saved a child's life. Get up," Mother hissed. "Get up this instant." But Ellen had seen the truth in Josiah's eyes. Surprise and gratitude and something else. Hope, maybe, or recognition. Reverend Bell cleared his throat. "Let the child sing us out. Sing the road home, little one." Marigold stood small in the back pew. Her voice rose clean and true. But the words weren't quite right. "Guide me, O thou great Jehovah, pilgrim through this barren land. I am weak, but thou art mighty. Hold me by thy river hand. River hand. Not powerful hand." Ellen's breath caught. "When I tread the verge of Jordan, bid my anxious fears subside. Bear me through the swelling current, lodge me safe on Canaan's side." Verge of Jordan, swelling current. These weren't the words from the hymn book. Ellen met Marigold's eyes. The child nodded once. A secret passed between them. The congregation emptied slowly. Hands shook the widow's hand. Words of comfort fell like autumn leaves. Ellen waited until only she and Marigold remained near the pulpit. "The hymn," Ellen whispered. "Those weren't the right words." Marigold glanced around, made sure they were alone. Ferries at the river bend. Jordan means crossing. Current means the water's up. Ellen's heart beat faster. "You're saying the verses point to real places?" "Clerk's got a window faces the square. Opens at first light. Midwife's got a stoop where she leaves the birthing basin. Quaker neighbor's got a door stays unlocked." The child's voice stayed steady, but her fingers trembled on the blue ribbon. "If the hymn is a map," Ellen whispered, "then the seal is the key." Reverend Bell approached with measured steps. His face showed nothing but kindness, but his eyes held warning. "Some songs carry more than melody," he said. "Some maps lead to dangerous places." Ellen understood. The Underground Railroad didn't advertise its routes, but sometimes a child's perfect pitch could hold secrets in plain hearing. Abel Griggs waited in the yard. Sweat stained his shirt. His hand rested on a leather pouch fat with papers. "Fine service," he said to Ellen. "Your daddy would have been proud." His smile showed too many teeth, like a dog before it bit. "Josiah's freedom papers came through," Abel said. He pulled documents from the pouch, unfolded them with ceremony. "Clerk sealed them yesterday, clean as Sunday morning." The papers looked official, thick parchment, careful script, a blob of red wax pressed with a signet ring. Marigold stepped closer. Her eyes moved over the documents like she was reading music. Ellen watched the child's face change. The frown was small but sure. "Wrong color," Marigold whispered. Abel's head snapped around. "What did you say?" "Nothing, sir." But Marigold's finger traced the air above the seal. "Just, the wax is pale, like candle drippings." Ellen looked closer. The seal did seem wrong. Too light, too smooth. The impression looked shallow. "Clerk Duval uses dark wax," old Samson said from the stable door. "Boils it himself from pine rosin and lamp black. Makes it near black as tar." Abel's jaw worked like he was chewing leather. "Papers are legal. Got the signet mark clear as day." But Marigold shook her head. "Serif's wrong on the D. Should curl left. This one goes straight." "You calling me a liar, girl?" The threat hung heavy as thunderclouds. Ellen stepped between them. "Before sundown, then," she said. "We'll need the clerk's true signet." Abel's eyes narrowed. "Boy gets sold tonight, papers or no papers. And if that Bible of your daddy's says different, I'll burn it myself." He spat in the dust, turned on his heel. Left the pouch on the porch rail like bait in a trap. Old Samson touched the stable hook at his belt. His knuckles showed white. "Storm's coming," he said. "Can smell it in the wind." The church basement smelled of old prayers and mouse droppings. Trunks lined the walls. Quilts folded tight as secrets. Ledger books thick as a man's fist. Reverend Bell lifted the lamp higher. Shadows danced on whitewashed walls. "Your father used to meet here with the other landowners, talking crops and weather and other things." Ellen understood. The Underground Railroad needed financing, needed safe houses, needed men willing to risk everything for strangers' freedom. He mentioned a note once. Reverend Bell said, "Something about Josiah's papers, something written in his Bible margin." Marigold knelt beside a trunk. Her small hands moved over brass fittings. "This one's got fresh oil on the hinges, been opened recent." The trunk held more than ledgers, a signet ring wrapped in cloth, dark sealing wax in a wooden box, a quilt with stitching that looked like star patterns. "Underground Railroad markers," Ellen breathed. "Flying geese pattern," Marigold said. "Points north, follow the drinking gourd." Old Samson lifted the lamp. "If the boys got real freedom papers, they'd be in your daddy's Bible. He always said, Scripture should govern the ledgers, not the other way round." Ellen's hands shook as she closed the trunk. They had the root from Marigold's hymn. They had the true signet and wax. Now they needed the Bible, and they needed to reach the clerk before Abel sold Josiah to the first slave trader willing to pay coin. The big house library held father's books like old friends. Ellen pulled the family Bible from its shelf, leather binding cracked with age, pages thin as moth wings. Mother found her there as thunder muttered overhead. "What are you doing?" Looking for comfort. Ellen's fingers moved along the margins, searching for Father's careful script. The only comfort, Mother said, is accepting what we cannot change. The estate's drowning in debt. Abel knows how to turn a profit. Ellen kept reading. Psalms, Proverbs, the margins full of Father's thoughts, notes about sermons, prayers for rain, reminders about grain prices. Then, tucked in the narrow gutter between pages in Galatians, Josiah, son of Caleb, born in the 23rd year of my stewardship, manumitted this day for faithful service and courage beyond duty, witnessed by my hand and Hester's mark, in the sight of God and neighbors, a date, Father's signature, Hester's careful X, Ellen's breath caught, Mother, look at this. But the widow had already turned away. I don't want to see it. Whatever it is, it can't help us now. Thunder shook the windows. Rain began in fat drops that turned the dust to mud. Ellen tucked the Bible under her cloak. Marigold waited by the kitchen door. Found it, Ellen whispered. Manumission clause. Written in Father's hand. Marigold's eyes went wide. When? 3 years passed. After Josiah saved that child from the runaway team. They slipped through the rain to old Samson's quarters. He sat mending harness by lamplight. His weathered hands stilled when Ellen showed him the margin note. Lord have mercy, he whispered. Boy's been free for 3 years. Why didn't your daddy file it? Because Abel needed the debt money, Ellen said. The pieces fit together now. If Josiah's free, the estate can't use him as collateral. Can't sell him to cover Father's debts. Lightning split the sky. In the flash, they saw Abel's men moving through the slave quarters, searching, getting ready for the night sale. We have to reach Clerk Duval, Ellen said, before they take Josiah away. Old Samson shook his head. Bridges out. Patrol road's a river. Won't be crossable till morning. Marigold hummed softly. The hymn came again. Different verses this time. Deep river, my home is over Jordan. Deep river, Lord, I want to cross over into campground. Ellen listened to the child's perfect pitch. The melody held instructions. Turn at the deep river, cross where the current narrows, follow the bank to the ferry landing. If we follow the hymn, Ellen said, can we reach the Clark by back ways? Dangerous, Samson warned. Patrol boats on, the river, dogs tracking runaways. But Marigold's voice held steady. The blue ribbon caught lamplight. Boatman at the ferry knows the crossing. Quaker neighbors got a door, stays unlocked. Midwife'll vouch for what she's seen. Ellen understood. They wouldn't just carry the Bible. They'd gather witnesses. People who remembered the day Father signed the manumission. People who could swear to its truth. Before dawn, then, she said, while Abel's men are sleeping off their whiskey. They left the house like shadows, mules' hooves soft in wet earth. Lightning showed the way in flashes. The main road had turned to rushing water. But Marigold sang directions. Wade in the water, children. Wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. The hymn led them down sheep paths and deer trails. Around the worst of the flooding, Ellen had never seen these backways, paths that didn't appear on any map, routes used by people who needed to move unseen. The river ran high and angry. White water frothed around fallen trees. The bridge hung in pieces like broken teeth. There, Marigold pointed through the rain. Downed oak makes a crossing. Like the Lord laid a finger down. The massive tree had fallen at just the right angle. Its trunk formed a bridge across the narrowest point. Bark still held. Branches tangled with the far bank. Old Samson tested the trunk with his boot. Holds good, but the crossing's narrow. One slip and the current takes you. Ellen looked back. Abel's lanterns moved through the plantation, searching for them, for Josiah, for anyone who might stand in the way of his prophet. Hold the Bible high, Samson said. The seal-keeper's ring will know its mate. Ephraim, the boatman, lived in a cabin above the ferry landing. His lantern burned even in the storm. He opened his door before they knocked. Figured somebody'd come, he said, on a night like this, looking for passage to truth. His cabin smelled of pipe tobacco and wood smoke. Charts covered the walls. River depths marked in careful numbers. Safe crossings noted in red ink. Ellen showed him the Bible margin. His eyes traced Father's handwriting. His head nodded slow. I remember that day, he said. Your daddy brought the boy here. said he wanted witnesses who couldn't be bought. Rivermen know the worth of a man's word. He reached for a wooden box on his mantel. Inside, wrapped in oiled cloth, lay papers of his own. "I keep records," he said. "Every crossing, every passage, every soul that went from bondage to freedom." Ellen's name was there, Josiah's name. The date matched the Bible margin exactly. "Clerk Duval will need this," Ephraim said. Proof that the signing was witnessed proper. Thunder rolled overhead. Rain drummed on the cabin roof. But Ellen felt something loosening in her chest. Hope, maybe, or faith that truth had its own power. Ruth Mendenhall answered their knock with a rifle in her hands. The Quaker woman's eyes were hard as flint, but when she saw the Bible, her face softened. "Come in from the storm," she said, "before the patrol boats see thy light." Her parlor held the quiet of deep faith. No ornaments, no pictures, just plain furniture and a fire that warmed without waste. Ellen showed her the margin note. Ruth's fingers traced the words like she was reading Braille. "I remember thy father's struggle," Ruth said, "between what the world demanded and what his conscience required. The day he freed Josiah, he wept like a child." She moved to a writing desk, pulled out a journal bound in brown leather. "I keep records, too, of visitors, of passages, of times when mercy required witness." The entry was there, Father's visit, his request for prayer, his confession that he'd been keeping a good man in bondage for fear of debt. "He asked me to pray for courage," Ruth said, "to do what was right regardless of cost. I told him the Lord's work always carries a price, but freedom's worth any earthly treasure." Ellen felt tears start. Father had struggled too, had known the choice was wrong, but fear of poverty had kept him silent, until Josiah's courage forced his hand. Hester lived in the midwife's cottage behind the plantation. Her shutters leaked light around the edges. Inside, she tended a woman in labor. The mother's cries mixed with thunder. "Baby's coming early," Hester said without turning. Storms got her spooked. Ellen waited while life entered the world. A son, healthy and strong. Hester cleaned him with gentle hands, wrapped him in soft cloth, placed him in his mother's arms. "Now," Hester said, "what brings thee out in weather like this?" Ellen showed her the Bible margin, Hester's mark, her witness to the manumission. "I remember," Hester said, "thy father came here after dark, said he needed someone who knew the weight of freedom, someone who'd helped souls cross over." She touched her mark beside Father's signature. "I told him freedom can't wait for convenient times. Child born in a storm's still a child. Man freed in secret, still free." The new mother looked up from her baby. "Hester delivered my first 3, she said. "Ain't never lost one. Ain't never told a lie about what she seen." Hester nodded. "When the clerk tests that seal, I'll stand witness. Been catching babies and truth for 40 years. Know the weight of both." They reached Clerk Duval's office as dawn broke grey through storm clouds. The square stood empty, shutters closed. Even the roosters stayed quiet. Ellen knocked on the side door, once, twice, a third time with the rhythm of the Underground Railroad. 3 short, 2 long, 3 short again. Silas Duval appeared like a ghost, thin and nervous, eyes that missed nothing. He wore his nightshirt and suspicion in equal measure. "Mighty early for legal business," he said. Ellen showed him the Bible, the margin note. The witness papers from Ephraim and Ruth and Hester. His hands shook as he read. "This changes everything," he whispered. "If this is real." "Test it," Ellen said. "Use your true signet, the dark wax. Press it beside the margin note." Duval led them into his office. Shelves lined with law books, a desk covered in documents, a strongbox that held the county's official seals. He pulled the signet from its case, warmed the dark wax over his lamp, but before he could press the seal, boots sounded on the stairs. Abel Griggs burst through the door, 2 men behind him, pistols drawn. "Sorry, Duval," Abel said, "but that Bible's evidence in a theft case. I'll be taking it into custody." Ellen clutched the book tighter. "Evidence of what theft?" "The boy stole grain. I got witnesses. Papers are legal. Sales already arranged." But Duval held up his hand. "Not so fast, Abel. This here's a manumission document. Properly witnessed. If it's genuine, your sale can't proceed." Abel's smile showed teeth like broken glass. Then I guess we better find out whose seal tells truth. He pulled papers from his coat, the same documents he'd shown in the yard. But now Ellen could see the difference. His wax was pale. Shallow. Wrong. Duval examined both seals with a magnifying glass. His face went white as bone. "Sweet Jesus," he whispered. "Abel, where'd you get this signet?" "From the county office. Legal as Sunday." But Duval shook his head. "This is my predecessor's mark, old clerk Morrison. He's been dead 2 years." "You been using a dead man's seal?" Abel's hand moved toward his pistol, but voices sounded outside. Wagon wheels, horses' hooves, a crowd gathering in the square. Through the window, Ellen saw them coming, Ruth with her rifle, Ephraim with his river charts, Hester carrying her midwife's bag, and behind them, half the county. Word had spread like wildfire. "This belongs on the margin that frees him," Duval said. "Bring the Bible to the church." Word flew through the county like sparks from a blacksmith's forge. A freedom case, a forged seal, a Bible with secrets in its margins. By the time the church bell called the town, carriages lined the square 3 deep. Ellen walked through mud and gathering crowds, the Bible pressed against her chest. Mother followed in silence, her widow's weeds dark as thunderclouds. Behind them came the witnesses, Ephraim with his ferry records, Ruth clutching her Quaker journal, Hester carrying the birthing woman's blessing. Abel had moved fast. His men surrounded the chapel steps. Patrol riders sat their horses in the square. A slave trader's wagon waited by the mill pond. Iron shackles gleamed in the morning light. "Public sealing," Silas Duval announced from the chapel door. "Let the county see justice done." But Abel's voice carried further. "Let them see a liar exposed. Child's been coached. Bible's been altered. I got legal papers and a buyer waiting." The crowd pressed closer. Voices rose. Some called for order. Others demanded proof. The church bell tolled once, more. Then silence fell like snow. Reverend Bell appeared in the doorway. His hands spread wide for quiet. "We ring the bell at dusk," he said. "Let the aisle decide." Inside the chapel, benches groaned under the weight of witnesses. Every pew filled. Men stood along the walls. Women held children on their laps. The air grew thick with breath and tension. Ellen placed the Bible on the altar rail. The leather binding looked small against so much watching. So much doubt. Marigold stood beside her, the blue ribbon bright against her dark skin. Mother entered last, pale but upright. Her hands clutched a handkerchief like a drowning woman clutching rope. She took her seat in the front pew, said nothing. Josiah was brought in chains. Iron hobbles made him shuffle, but his head stayed high. His eyes found Ellen's across the packed aisle. A nod passed between them. Courage shared like a secret. Abel strutted to the front. His forged papers rustled like dead leaves. "Good people," he called. "We're here to prevent a theft. This girl and her coached slave aim to steal valuable property with fairy tales and forgery." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some heads nodded. Abel had friends among the landowners, men who feared their own slaves getting ideas. "Read what is written," Mother said suddenly. Her voice cut through the whispers. "Let no one speak over Scripture." The words surprised everyone, most of all Ellen, but the widow's eyes held something new. Not surrender, not fear. Possibility, maybe. Hope struggling against shame. Silas Duval unfolded the margin note with shaking fingers. His voice carried to the back pews. "Josiah, son of Caleb, born in the 23rd year of my stewardship, manumitted this day for faithful service and courage beyond duty, witnessed by my hand and Hester's mark. In the sight of God and neighbors, the date rang clear. 3 years passed." Hester stepped forward. "I made that mark," she said. "Watched the master sign it. Boy was freed legal and proper." Abel laughed, hard and sharp. "Old woman's been paid to lie. I got counterproof." He flourished his forged documents. Fresh papers, legal seal. "Boy's mine, until the buyer comes." Marigold stepped into the aisle, small against the crowds watching. But her voice carried steady and true. "Wrong color wax," she said. "Wrong serif on the D. Wrong everything." The child's certainty rang like a bell. Abel's swagger cracked just a little. "Press it then," he snarled. "Let's see whose mark stands." Duval warmed the dark wax over a brass lamp. The smell of pine rosin filled the air. The true signet waited in his palm. Witness chain first, Reverend Bell said. Let truth build proper. Marigold hummed soft. One verse of the hymn. Ephraim stepped forward. I keep records of the crossing, the boatman said. Master Ashford brought the boy to me, said he needed witnesses who couldn't be bought. I wrote it down that very day. He showed his leather. Log, entries in fading ink, names and dates, and river levels. Ruth stood next. Friend Ashford struggled with his conscience. The light showed him slavery's sin. I counseled him toward freedom. Her Quaker journal held the truth. Father's visit. His tears. His request for prayer. Hester moved last. I caught that boy when he was born, watched him grow, seen his courage save a child. Master freed him proper. I witnessed it with these hands. The chain held strong. 3 witnesses, 3 records, 3 voices, swearing to the truth. Duval pressed the hot signet into dark wax. The impression bit deep. Clean lines, perfect detail. A mark that matched the ring on Father's finger. The crowd leaned forward. Even Abel stepped closer. The seal cooled in silence. Then Duval lifted it with trembling hands. The impression was perfect. Deep, dark, undeniable. Read the ledger beside it, Hester said. Let ink catch the thief. The church ledger held more than prayers and offerings. It held business records, debt notes, bills of sale. The financial heart of the county's life. Duval's finger traced entries in 2 different hands. Black ink for legitimate business. Brown ink for something else. Here, he said. Sale of 1 Negro male. Entered twice. Once in black ink, once in brown. The brown entries showed inflated prices. False debts. Money that flowed to Abel's accounts instead of the estate's. Ellen's voice cut through the murmurs. Double billing. He's been stealing from the estate for years. Abel's face went red as fresh blood. Lies, all lies. But the ledger told its own story. Debts that didn't exist. Sales that were never made. A pattern of theft, stretching back to Father's first illness. A patroller stepped forward, removed the badge from Abel's shirt, tossed it on the altar rail beside the cooling wax. It won't free the boy, Abel spat. Ellen lifted her chin, met his hatred with quiet steel. Then break his chains here. The keys hung heavy in Duval's hand. Official, county keys. The only ones that could open federal shackles. By the authority of this seal, he read, and the witness of this community, I declare Josiah Freeman to be manumitted, free, no longer property of any man. The locks clicked open. Iron fell to plank floors with sounds like prayers answered. Josiah flexed his fingers, rubbed his wrists where the metal had chafed. Ellen stepped into the aisle. The same spot where she'd first kissed his shackled hands, where Mother had commanded her to stop. Now she lifted those hands again, free hands, and pressed her lips to his knuckles while the congregation watched. Don't you dare kiss a Negro, the words echoed from memory. But this time, Ellen answered, I'll kiss a free man in God's house any day I choose. The chapel erupted. Some voices cheered, others grumbled. But the sound was changing. Fear giving way to something else. Possibility, maybe. Hope for a different world. Mother stood slowly. Her handkerchief fell to the floor. Names, she whispered. Write more names. Margaret Ashford's voice carried over the crowd's murmur. The widow rose like a woman waking from a long dream. Her hands shook, but her words held steady. I declare a new household charter, she said. Debts settled without human sale. The Bible to govern all ledgers. Any forged paper burned in this very aisle. Gasps rippled through the chapel. Ellen's heart hammered against her ribs. Mother had never spoken such words, had never imagined such possibilities. Furthermore, the widow continued, I request papers for this child's family, under chapel protection until lawful filing. She pointed to Marigold, who stood clutching her blue ribbon. She's shown more courage than grown men, more truth than county officials. Time her people knew freedom too. Abel sputtered protests from the side aisle, but 2 patrollers flanked him now. His stolen badge lay tarnished on the altar rail. His power bled away like water through cupped hands. Reverend Bell stepped forward. His voice boomed over the packed pews. Bring her people forward. Let the porch hear their names. The chapel emptied slowly. Voices carried debates into the square. Some folks shook their heads at the widow's rashness. Others nodded approval. Change never came easy to the county, but it came nonetheless. Ellen walked beside Josiah down the chapel steps. His stride had altered. Longer now, free. A man who owned his own footprints. "What will you do?" she asked. His smile came slow. "Hire on as your coachman, if the offer stands. Got nowhere else I'd rather be." Behind them, Marigold hummed the Freedom Hymn, but the verses had changed again. Now they carried joy instead of directions, hope instead of hiding places. Mother touched Ellen's arm. "I was afraid," she said, "afraid of what people would say, what we'd lose. But watching you in that aisle," her voice caught, "you look just like your father. The day he freed Josiah, the day he chose courage over comfort." Ellen squeezed her mother's fingers. "We'll manage the debts. Honest work pays honest wages." Verse by verse, the widow agreed. Name by name. Midnight found them on the plantation porch. Lamps burned in windows across the county. Word traveled fast in farming communities. By morning, every soul for 20 miles would know about the chapel trial, about the forged papers and the Bible's hidden clause. Hester emerged from the slave quarters with a bundle of papers, birth records, work histories, family trees traced in careful script. "Been keeping these safe," she said, "waiting for a day like this." Old Samson followed, with his carpenter's tools. "Fixing to build proper cottages," he announced. "Folks need homes, not quarters. Places they can call their own." Ruth Mendenhall's wagon stood ready in the yard. Ephraim waited with river passes. Safe conduct to the county seat, where Duval would file the freedom papers. Marigold sat on the porch steps, retying her blue ribbon, but this time she wound it around the Bible's spine, a bookmark for the page that held Josiah's manumission, a reminder that Scripture could indeed govern ledgers. "One more verse," Samson said, "for the crossing we have yet to make." Dawn crept across tobacco fields like hope taking root. The household gathered in the yard, free voices rising in harmony, former slaves and their former mistress singing together. The melody that had once hidden escape routes now proclaimed victory. "Guide me, O thou great Jehovah, pilgrim through this barren land." But the land didn't seem barren anymore. It seemed full of possibility, full of people ready to work for wages instead of whips, ready to build something new from the ashes of something old. Silas Duval arrived with the official documents. Freedom papers bearing the true seal, dark wax that would never crack or fade, names written in permanent ink. He handed Margaret the sealed copies, her estate's new charter, her commitment to abolition written in legal language that would stand in any court. Josiah took the reins of the wagon, not as property now, but as a hired man. His wages would be fair, his home his own, his children born into freedom's light. Ellen watched from the porch as the wagon rolled toward town, toward a future that looked different than the past, toward hope that had been hidden in a child's hymn and a Bible's margin. Mother sat beside her on the porch swing. The widow's hands lay still in her lap. No more wringing handkerchiefs. No more counting coins that would never stretch far enough. "Your father would be proud," she said. "Of you, of what we've started here." Ellen nodded. The kiss that had scandalized the congregation now seemed like the most natural thing in the world. Love recognizing love, courage honoring courage, freedom claiming its own. The blue ribbon fluttered on the Bible's spine. Marigold's perfect pitch had unlocked more than escape routes. It had unlocked hearts, consciences, the quiet courage that slept in ordinary people until extraordinary moments called it forth. Across the county, other plantations would hear the news. Other widows would count their moral costs alongside their financial debts. Other children would discover that hymns could carry more than melody. Change spread like ripples in still water, starting small, growing wide, touching shores that seemed impossibly distant. Ellen rose from the porch swing. Work waited in the fields. Honest work that would pay honest wages. The road ahead stretched long and uncertain. But it belonged to them now. Every step, every mile, every choice between comfort and conscience. Inside the house, the family Bible lay open to Galatians, to the margin where Father's careful script had planted seeds of freedom, where his courage had finally found its voice. "Stand fast, therefore, in the liberty wherewith Christ hath made us free." The Scripture, read, "and be not entangled again with the yoke of bondage." The words seemed to glow in the morning light, a promise kept, a vow fulfilled, a household redeemed one name at a time,